Hi, it's me again, Dr. Anthony VT, your expert behavioral analyst, licensed global coach, and your directional strategist, maximizing your full potential. Now today we're going to be looking at the word scope. As you can see, scope. When we say the word scope, what comes to mind? Telescope. Now, tele is the Greek word for the word far, and scope means area or extent. So when we look at the scope today, it's in the context of product. You basically are producing a product, you've just designed a product, and you want to think of the scope of that product. So what extent do you want to add to your product? To which extent do you want to take it out? How far and how wide do you want to go? And that's where we have the word telescope. Now you can choose. You can have your product just go to a local supermarket, a small store, or you can choose for it to go globally. That's entirely up to you. Here's the truth. When you talk about the true scope of your product, you must have that aligned to your vision. Because if your vision originally said you want to go globally, then you'll know what steps to take, what measurements to take, what procedures to put in place so that you can have the scope or the extent to which you want to go. Now, the first letter of the acronym in scope is the word S. S stands for the word stretch. Now, when you think of the word stretch, I'd like to bring to your mind the good old elastic band. Now, if I just hold up the elastic band, even if you can't see it, you know an elastic band, in its normal form, it's actually useless. But the moment I take it and I stretch it, it's coming to its full use. Now, if you want your product to be useful in the market, you have to stretch your mind, stretch your capacity, and make sure that you basically get the best out of your product. Now, when we do exercises, we know it's wise to stretch and do warm-up exercises before the time. But here's the truth. If you go straight into stretching without just wheeling a little bit, you can actually injure yourself. So I would like to help you with your product. As you stretch your mind, as you stretch your paradigm in terms of how far you want to go, don't stretch too fast too soon. Make sure that you do it gradually. And remember, once you stretch to capacity, if you stretch too far, what will happen? You will break. So you need to know that there's an elasticity and that there's basically a rhythm. There's basically enough space, but you cannot go beyond what the product really can endure. That speaks for itself. Now we've had the S for stretch. Looking at the next one, actually is the word capacity. It was such a natural transition for me to think of, as I stretch the product, what's the next thing? It would be the capacity. You and I will create the capacity out there in the market. Now remember, you can decide to go global, you can decide to be local. It makes no difference. But the capacity of the product has everything to do with what volume do I need to produce? What size must it be in? What shape? What color? What design? So the capacity of the product has got many dimensions to it. But the capacity really comes down to how many of which color, in which size, in which store. Now, that's, say, speaking about a retail industry. But online marketing is totally different. You do know you have a product, and you have one disadvantage. You don't always have a tangible product, but you can help it become tangible through the emotional touch of that product. And once you get the people to engage, you've created capacity for them to desire the product. In fact, we call that NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming. You have to bring the NLP factor so that the capacity is conveyed in such a way that people say, we want the product. So create your capacity. You've had S for stretch, you've had C for capacity, now we have the O. This one is the most important one. I want to tell you that you can do so many things with your product, but if you don't get the O right, if you don't get this one right, you will be very, 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 very sorry. So what can we do not to be sorry? Let's to first find out what it means. Do you want to know? Okay, here we go. It stands for the 1T. What on earth is the 1T? The 1T is the one thing. Now, I remember there was a movie by Billy Crystal, and he actually asked a question in the movie, what is the one thing? I watched this movie, and to my dismay, having watched the entire movie, he came to the very last line in the movie and said, I've got it. I know what is the one thing. And everybody was listening up. Do you want to know the answer? The one thing is the one thing. You got it. No surprise. As surprised as I was, the one thing is the one thing. So you want to say to yourself, what is the one thing that your product has that really makes it stand out? Make sure that it will have the capacity, because people want your product if it has the one thing factor. It's the one thing that people want. Let's think about just a normal supermarket. What's the one thing that you walk in for every single day in terms of your household budget? Bread and milk. It's the one thing you can't go without. In fact, it's your basic diet. Isn't it true? So what I want you to say is, just stick to the one thing of your product and you will know what to communicate to your people. That is the scope. You have to determine the one thing of what people want. So you've had the S for stretch, you've had the C for capacity, you've had the O for 1T. Now I'm going to go into a word that might not be known by everybody, and it's the word purview. In the scope, you have to determine the purview. You know what that stands for? And if this is new to you, learn a new word, purview. It has got nothing to do with perving, which we know is perverse. It's got nothing to do with the way that you view things, but it actually has to do with the scope of influence. Purview means, what is the scope of influence? That means when you have your product in the marketplace, how will it influence people on the left? How will it influence people on the right? How will it help people understand what is the scope of influence? What is the purview of your product? In a sense, you want people to know your product so well that they can start purring about it. I mean, I remember in the days, giving my age away, that my dad was driving a Studebaker, and I just at that the way that Studebaker had an idle, it was purring like a kitten. I loved it. You see, it was the scope of influence that was given through the sound, because I could close my eyes, I could just know that's my dad's Studebaker. It had a specific sound. But when I opened my eyes, not only could I hear the purring of that engine, I could view it and confirm and say, yes, that's my dad's Studebaker. I want to tell you, I love those days. Can you think back to a day where there's just sound or smell or something? You know, sometimes you and I just listen to a record and you go, oh yes, do you remember when we were, and I can give you any scenario, because sound brings it back to you. Well, with the purview of your product, with the scope of your product within the purview, the P for purview, you are literally saying, what is the scope of influence? How far, how wide am I literally taking my ambit? It's literally, you can take a stick and say, I can draw a circle that wide. But remember, if I want to go wider, I need a longer stick. It's exactly. That purview is determined by taking the distance of how far you want to go, and to also look at the area of influence. So that's the scope of influence that you will have for your product. So, you've had the S for stretch, you've had the C for capacity, O stands for, remember, 1T, P stands for purview. And then lastly we get to this word that will change everything depending on how you apply it. You need to use your product to excite the market. Man, there's nothing like being excited about something. I love it when people are excited about their life. Another word for excited is passion. Does your product communicate passion to people? I mean, you want to make sure that it's in the face of people. And even if it's a basic product, I want to tell you, if they know where you have housed it, they will go looking for it. That's why, just a little tip. Why do you think the bread is situated at the back of the store? Because you want people to walk all past the more expensive items to the basic items at the back for the bread. We talk about the good, better, best principle, but we also know that if there's a basic commodity, you stretch them right through. Good, better, best. Sometimes you have your best deal right up front, but sometimes your best product is housed at the back of the store, but you have to pull them through. See, this is all part of that sales and marketing of how you actually approach the product. We'll get to that in another session, but for today, I wanted you to know you have the capacity now. You now have a scope for your product. How far, how wide will you take it? That's up to you. Now remember, learn every day, lead yourself, and inspire others. This is Dr. Anthony. See you again.